Welcome to Go Green Radio, everybody. We're so glad that you could join us today. We're going to be talking about a very influential tribal confederation that has endorsed the Climate North Star Global Climate Rescue Plan. And our guests today are Mike Durglo. He is with the Confederated tribe. We're going to be talking with him about their decision to endorse this rescue plan. And our guest is also David Merrill, and he is the founder and project director for Climate North Star. And I'm so excited to talk about this topic. And David, I'm going to start with you. Welcome to Go Green Radio. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, let's start at the beginning. What inspired you to found Climate North Star?
So I've been involved with the climate issue. It's really been part of my daily thinking since 1997. And I've noticed from the start that the urgency expressed by climate scientists about the seriousness of the threat and what we need to do is continually downplayed. It's almost like if you went to get your car repaired and the mechanic found out you need a new radiator, but didn't want to tell you that because you might be upset and says, well, just change a few spark plugs. It's a serious thing. We're talking about the livability of the planet. And we have to be very direct about what the climate scientists are saying and what we need to do. And I've always been very interested in that all through these many decades of being involved with this issue. It's become my life's work. So the biggest example of this downplaying the severity of the threat and what we need to do is the 1.5 Celsius temperature target of the Paris Climate Agreement. Now, it's widely recognized that this would be a safe long-term temperature, 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. However, that is not based on science. That was a politically calculated thing that came out of the Paris Climate Agreement. And now everybody thinks, well, if we limit it to that level, we'll be kind of okay.
Hmm.
That is not what the scientists are saying.
Yeah.
Actually, the long-term safe temperature is zero point 0.5 Celsius, which we last had on Earth in 1985.
Yeah.
So the last time temperatures were this high, sea levels were 20 to 30 feet higher.
Wow. And
So,
we're gonna dive into that
yeah.
because I know that's one of the key findings of the Climate North Star Rescue Plan, and we're gonna dig into that and talk about what the world will be like with 1.5 versus zero point 0.5. And
Exactly.
I'm so glad to have you on with us. And Mike, so excited to have you on as well. You're on the Tribal Council for the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribe, also a board member for Climate North Star, and we're so glad to have you on the show as well. Tell us how you got involved with Climate North Star.
Good morning, Jill. Het squex pesia et jesuisum het Louis squex, kisu quicknum ox machinic cucoclix gauis caclautla. Good morning, everybody. My given name is Standing Grizzly Bear. As Jill said, my English name is Mike Durglo, and I'm actually not on tribal council. I tried that. I thought I wanted to be a politician back in 95, 96, and I served one term, which is 4 years, and that was enough for me. Didn't do very good at politics. And actually, right after that, I actually went to college, got my degree in environmental science, and then started working for the tribes in the Natural Resources Department. And about 20, I think 2012 is when we started climate work here on the tribe. And we were actually one of the first tribes in the United States to develop a strategy. Swinomish was first. I think Nez Perce was working on theirs when I started ours. But through that whole process, I think it was, I don't remember, David. We've known each other for several years. I think actually I met David at one of our Earth Day events. David came and presented. I can't remember even exactly what it was at the time that I met David, and we just got involved. We been in touch ever since then, and really got to know each other, and been working together since.
That's awesome. That's amazing. Well, I'm ready to dive in to what is on your website on Climate North Star, the Maximum Speed Global Climate Rescue Plan. And David, I'd love for you to begin by talking about who was involved in writing it. I think it's important for our listeners to understand that this is a credible document. So let's start there.
Sure. So I wanted to pull together experts in different areas and combine their contributions and see what, if we did these things, what would that impact the global temperature, sea level rise, and other things. Um, so the energy transition piece, which is moving to 100% renewable energy by 2035, was written by Steve Nelson. He has extensive experience in researching high-speed energy transition plans. One of his prior plans was described as a remarkable work that ranks right up with energy transition and energy vision works by eminent researchers worldwide, and that was from the senior consulting scientist for the Union of Concerned Scientists. Dominic Della Sala is a widely recognized expert on forestry. He's worked for several nonprofit conservation organizations for over 40 years as a global biodiversity and climate change scientist. He's also served as president of the Society for Conservation Biology North America section, and he's internationally renowned author of over 300 peer-reviewed articles and 9 co-authored award-winning books. So definitely a leading voice in forestry practices. Dr. Marshall McDaniel is an associate professor of agronomy at Iowa State University, and his research strives to inform management that enhances soil plant synergy that leads to sustainable agro ecosystem management.
Mhm.
And then Scott Denning is a professor of atmospheric science at Colorado State University. He took the recommended steps for energy transition, forestry, and agriculture and calculated what these policies would have on carbon emissions, atmospheric CO2 concentrations, global temperature, and sea level rise. Jeremy Drake is an expert on waste reduction. Um, he's designed programs and implemented these programs for collection system procurement, stakeholder engagement, technical assistance, and education. And he is a part of Zero Waste Associates, which is one of the global leaders in zero waste. And then finally, climate justice organizing is a very important part of what we're doing, focusing on the folks that are hit first and worst from climate change. And the climate justice section was written by Mark Chavez, who's a longtime climate justice organizer. So a really sharp group of people came together and kind of pulled all these pieces together to come up with a maximum speed plan for addressing this climate threat.
Sounds like a dream team. Great group
Exactly.
of folks, great thinkers. So, Mike, I want to go back to you and I want you to talk to us about the Confederated, Salish, and Kootenai tribes, the CSKT,
Mhm.
Tribal Council's position on climate change and why Climate North Star aligns with the Tribal Council's vision for the future.
Sure, thanks, Joe. As I shared before, we were one of the first tribes in the United States to develop a strategy that was back in 2012. We finished that up in 2013. And one of the things that I felt very strongly about is, and I told Tribal Council, is that this has to be a living document because things are changing as we speak, as we have all witnessed. So I think, and then in 2016, we revised the plan the first time, and I can't remember. I think my brother Joe was on tribal council, and basically I said, Joe, if you don't do this, I'm telling mom. So that's how we get it done. But the tribal council actually passed a resolution stating that climate change is a risk to our health, our security, and welfare of the tribes as a whole. That was in 2022. And I think even that was a first that I know of in the country for a tribal council to pass a resolution. And it directed all programs and departments within the tribal organization to take into consideration climate change
Mhm.
in their work plans. So that's been a challenge because, I mean, for a lot of people, it's like, how do we do that?
Yeah.
how do we get that done? So that's one of the things we've been working on currently I'm in the process and almost really close to finalizing our new strategy, our new plan. And that's available online for everybody. A pitch here. It's at csktclimate.org.
CSKTclimate.org. All
Yep.
right, we're going to check that out. I'm already feeling a part two of this show coming. We need more. I want more from the tribal's wisdom on this. So, David, we talked a little bit about this earlier in the segment, the difference between the Paris Accords and the 1.5 Celsius that we're supposed to be able to live with, and the future with a zero point 0.5 Celsius difference. Help us understand why Climate North Star is pushing for more of a zero point 0.5 Celsius situation than the 1.5 Celsius that the Paris Accords are pushing.
So we know from Earth's history that the zero point 0.5 Celsius temperature limit was what allowed us to build cities on coastlines around the world. The planet was sufficiently cool that the sea levels allowed us to do that all around the planet. And we passed out of that safe level in 1985. That's the last time we registered zero point 0.5 Celsius. And we're getting into an area now where we know that the ice sheets have melted in the past. In fact, at the current temperature, which is 1.4 Celsius, we know that sea levels were 20 to 30 feet higher than they are today. And people may ask, well, then why aren't the sea levels 20 to 30 feet higher right now? And that's because it takes time for the warming to get and impact the actual ice sheets on Greenland and Antarctica. But there is alarming warming in both of those places. And it's really kind of an emergency situation. The scientists that have looked at this for a long time held an emergency meeting last fall to kind of warn the planet that we're looking at very serious melting if we don't get off of fossil fuel burning as soon as possible. And so we're trying to shift the conversation from it's going to get hotter and hotter and the impact's more and more severe to let's stop the warming of the planet by 2035. And zero point 0.5 Celsius, if we get back to that this century, we can maintain the ice sheets at a level which will allow our coastal cities to continue to function.
Mhm.
If we don't, we could see the scientists said maybe 13 feet of sea level this century. I mean, imagine what that would do to Los Angeles, Seattle, New York City, and other cities around the world. So, very serious. And again, the science has been kind of pushed off to the side. We need to know what the safe temperature level is, and we need to know how quickly we have to move. And that's what Climate North Star is all about.
We're going to take a quick commercial break, but we have so much more to talk about with David and Mike. So don't go away, folks. There's more Go Green Radio right after this. Welcome back to Go Green Radio, everybody. So glad that you could join us. And if you're just tuning in, let me catch you up. Our guests today are David Merrill, the founder and project director of Climate North Star, and Mike Durglo, who is with the Confederated Tribal Council, or with the tribe of the Salish and the Kootenai. And we're talking about why the Tribal Council unanimously endorsed Climate North Star's plan to work on climate change and to arrest climate change so that we have a livable, survivable planet. Mike, I want to go back to you. For our listeners who are unfamiliar with tribal governance, help us understand the significance of CSKT's unanimous endorsement of Climate North Star's Global Climate Rescue Plan. How will this action impact the tribes going forward, and how might this action influence other tribes to take similar action?
Sure. Thanks, Jill. So I wanted to share earlier it was so important when I was developing or coordinating the process of developing our strategy back in 2012 to include tribal knowledge, so indigenous knowledge of our elders. And if you look at the website that I shared earlier, CSKTclimate.org, you'll see videos of those interviews with the elders. I got in trouble for calling them interviews. They told me to call them recorded visits. So that's what we're doing.
Perfect.
But during that process, it was like a lot of the elders were saying, we've been seeing this change around us in our world, in our land, in our medicines that we gather, in the foods and all that stuff. We've been seeing it for quite a long time. And one of the elders, Pat Pierre, who passed on, said that he thinks about the future, and I think that during that time there was a lot of wildfires and smoke, but he talked about a changing future. But the council it's so important to get your council, your tribal council, your leadership engaged and informed. And I think, for myself doing this for all the years that I've been doing, I think we're really at the forefront
Hmm.
of in leadership in this the climate work that we've been doing. And in fact, I received an award from President Obama for the work that we've done with other tribes in the country, including Canada, Alaska, clear down to Arizona and New Mexico. So and all in between. So it's just really having the support of the council, and they're really the driving force behind the mandating of all the departments to make sure that we take that into consideration in the work that we do.
When you guys are working with other tribes, do you have routine meetings where these types of issues could be brought up? And um,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
that's incredible. That's incredible. David, I want to go back to the rescue plan and talk to you about one of the other key findings in it. I'm going to read from it. It says Climate North Star is designed to prevent the collapse of the ice sheets of Antarctica and Greenland. If they did collapse, coastal cities worldwide would be flooded, likely causing, in turn, the collapse of the global economy and society. Take some time to explain this concept to our listeners.
So people may wonder, why is there this intense focus on the ice sheets when there's thousands of climate impacts all around the world? And the answer is that 40% of the global population lives within 65 miles of the coast. So it's an incredible concentration of population and infrastructure, and it's a uniquely devastating threat to economics and the functioning of society. And if we start seeing coastal cities flood worldwide, that would be such an enormous impact that it could be easily beyond our ability to adapt to.
Hmm.
And it could cause an economic collapse, and it could cause a societal collapse as well, because it would just be so overwhelming. And this threat is quite imminent. And that's why there's this intense focus on ice sheet collapse, because it is such a major threat to not only natural systems, but also from the built environment of humanity.
You mentioned infrastructure, and I mean, we could do a whole month of shows just on the kind of infrastructure that we have built over a long period of time on our coasts around the world. You think about ports, airports, wastewater treatment, energy infrastructure, transportation. It took generations of funding, public dollars, to build all of that infrastructure. It's not like we could just, pick it up and move it 65 miles inland, and just keep going, you know? Uh,
Exactly.
yep, that is a lot of public dollars invested over generations that would have to be replaced and everybody moving inland. So it really is worth pausing to consider what that means.
Exactly.
Mike, I myself grew up in Southern Illinois, nowhere near an ocean. Your reservation is inland. And when we talk about, flooded coastal cities, it might be easy for people who live inland to think that their lives could go on as usual if coastal cities were no longer livable. But in fact, your Confederated tribes, are thinking about this, and I'd love to know your perspective on why coastal city flooding is everybody's problem and something we should all be concerned about.
Right. And, I used to think that because I have relatives at the coast who live in Washington over by Portland, and I used to go fishing over there every year. And, and I always used to think, well, if 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 that floods, then my fishing hole is going to be closer to home. I don't have to drive as far,
How
but it's
convenient.
like it's scary, right? It's a scary concept, and
Mhm.
I, in fact, when I talked about the Swinomish tribe being they were actually the first tribe to develop a strategy. Their whole strategy was around sea level rise
Mhm.
because they're basically an island. Their reservation is island. And just seeing the impacts, like I shared earlier, I work with tribes in Alaska. Those guys are ground zero.
Yep.
I've been up there several times to visit with them, to put on workshops, and their whole thing is like, well, Mike, we don't have time even to develop a plan. We are in reaction mode.
Yeah.
We're having to move our villages. We're even our some of our burial sites are going into the rivers and the ocean and their homes. I mean, you've all seen it.
Hmm.
So, that's one of the things is that we are, even though we're I mean, I always think about how long does it take me to get to the fishing hole over with my relatives. It's like 9 hour drive. And I'll tell you, I've been, my cousin calls at 10 o'clock at night. I get in the car and head that way. So it's like, even though it's 9 hour drive, we are directly impacted
Yep.
because, we are at the headwaters of the Columbia River. So
Oh.
everything that comes off of our mountains goes downriver. So that's impacting all of that along the way.
Hmm.
And it's all connected.
Absolutely. Well, and all of us, that live inland are receiving goods that are shipped into ports on coastal cities and then the transportation to get it to us.
Mhm.
And not to mention the fact that, if 40% of the population, as David mentioned, lives in coastal cities and they can't live there anymore, we're all going to get kind of tightly packed inland as well. So that's another thing to consider. David, I want to go back and talk more about the four pillars of the rescue plan. And the first is achieving global all sector 100% renewable energy by 2035. Talk to us about why this is so vital and some of the challenges we face in achieving that timeline.
So climate change is overwhelmingly caused by the burning of coal, oil, and natural gas. So that's the cause. We need to stop it. We're doing it. It's our activity that's continuing it. So that's the most important pillar of the entire plan. And calling for that to be done by 2035 is highly aggressive. It's quite unique. You won't see that recommended very much. There's a lot of talk about 2050. But again, we're trying to shift the conversation to more of an emergency footing. Let's do this as fast as possible. So Mark Jacobson of Stanford University said that it is technologically and economically feasible
Hmm.
to create such a system by 2035. So we're on solid ground in terms of peer-reviewed research. Now, it's extremely ambitious. It would mean something akin to what we did at the outset of World War II, where we
Hmm.
shifted all the major industries over to war production. We would have to start shifting over our industrial lines to producing all electric vehicles. China, for example, is rapidly electrifying their heavy transport. They have trucks now that are fully electric with the heavy duty battery charging stations. We need to do the same thing. We need to shift over to producing more electric vehicles, more heat pumps, which can run on electricity and renewable energy and are much more efficient. And basically, it goes back to the native wisdom is that the health of the entire planet is central to all that we do as humanity. It has to be at the center of all of our thinking. And we need to preserve a livable planet for our children. So this would mean a very dramatic shift in focus by government and also industry so that we can produce the products that we need to have a renewable energy system in under 10 years. And again, it may seem impossible, but at this point, we need to attempt something that seems impossible because it's very late. It's going to have to be very ambitious. And there's no reason that we should be cutting back on the goal of 2035 at this point. Let's see how close we can come.
Yeah, if you don't try, you definitely will not make it. So, I mean,
Yes.
at least trying is so important. And I've always thought, I mean, they call these fossil fuels for a reason. It's not like the Earth is making, new coal, new oil, new natural gas. I mean, at some point they're going to run out anyway, or be so hard to get to that we're going to use more energy getting them out of the ground than we're going to get in putting them to work. And so it just makes sense anyway to make this transition, but the speed at which we need to make it is what's important to remember. Mike, how can the tribes support this pillar of the climate rescue plan?
I think a big part of it is outreach and education, and informing people, informing our people what and how we can as individuals. One of the things I always think about is it seems to me, and I've read this before, is that the big the big fuel companies are trying to place the blame on the individual. We do have a responsibility, like David said. Part of my own upbringing with my grandparents, my great grandparents, who never even spoke English, was uh, uh, a spirit of reciprocity. Take only what you need, don't waste it. So that's kind of think the thinking that I believe that that we have, but we also live in this new world.
Hmm.
So I drive a truck. I live in Montana. So, I'm looking at possibly someday I'll have a electric vehicle, but infrastructure is a challenge here.
Yep.
We don't have the charging stations. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about was I'm currently in the process of doing a greenhouse gas inventory of the whole tribal organization. So looking at how many vehicles we have, what type of fuels they use, whether it's diesel or gasoline,
Hmm.
how many buildings do we have, how many of those buildings are heated and cooled by propane, electricity, and that type of thing. So, and all of that depends on the support of our leadership.
Yep.
Can't emphasize
Absolutely.
that enough. It really takes the backing of our leadership.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, we have much more with David and Mike, so don't go away, folks. There's more Go Green Radio right after this. Welcome back to Go Green Radio. So glad that you could all join us for this discussion. We've been talking about Climate North Star. You can check them out on their website. Just Google Climate North Star, and they have a climate rescue plan that we're discussing today. And the reason we have Mike on is because his tribe unanimously, their tribal council unanimously decided to endorse and support Climate North Star's climate rescue plan. David, we've been talking about the plan. We've been talking about the pillars. The second pillar is something I'd like to discuss now. I'm going to read from the plan. It says transforming global forestry practices at maximum speed to reduce the release of and sequester carbon in Earth's forests and store it long term. Now, many of us are not well versed in forestry practices, so help us understand what reaching this goal would require.
So the forestry stock on the planet is a tremendous storage of carbon and a tremendous ability to store carbon emissions. So it's a critical part of the climate rescue plan. And the most important thing is protecting unlogged forests, especially the old, mature, old growth forests. They are a phenomenal source of carbon storage, and we need to simply put them off limits. We need them for the health of the planet, and we don't need to be cutting down these mature old trees. Um, One of the things that we can do is allow degraded forests to reacquire stocks at um, a slower rate. Another thing is to plant native trees on fallowed fields, and then also reforestation on cutover lands where needed. So basically, it's slowing down the cutting. And the other thing that we need to do is we need to focus a lot more on using recycled fibers and alternative fibers. For example, bamboo can be harvested in 3 to 5 years. Compare that to the decades it takes to harvest trees. And it is a superb storage for it absorbs carbon at a higher rate than trees. And so we should be using a lot more of these rapid turnover alternative fibers like bamboo for our paper products.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to dramatically upgrade the recycling as well because an enormous amount of paper is wasted that could be put into new products.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we need to be protecting forests, especially the old mature growth forests. They need to be off limits to logging and degradation. And we need to be replanting native trees where appropriate to increase the forest stock.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to put a plug in for bamboo as well. There was a point in time where I wanted to get PFAS out of my house, and carpet is one of the places where you can reduce your exposure to PFAS chemicals. And we wanted to put in wood floors that would be easier to clean with kids and dogs and all of that. And doing research way back when, I found that bamboo was a great choice, sustainable in so many ways, and hard as nails. I mean,
Hmm.
they stand up to time. They really do. So there's a lot of ways to support and embrace this goal. And Mike, I want to ask you, what are some of the ways that CSKT, the tribal council, and the members of the tribe could demonstrate support for this pillar of the rescue plan?
I have a question for you first. What is
Sure.
PFAS?
PFAS is a family of man-made chemicals
Oh, okay.
that we've done some shows on this, and it's been getting into our water supply in a lot of places, including where I live. And it's
Mhm.
used on a number of different products and
Fabrication.
applications like Teflon pans and grease resistant, stain resistant things. And so um, I'll send you some info because it's important to know about for
Yeah,
sure.
definitely. Thank
Yeah.
you for that. So, we are one tribe that historically is a timber resource tribe.
Mm.
So we depended a lot on the timber sales for our funds, our budgets for the tribal organization historically.
Hmm.
In the last, I don't know, 20, 30 years, that has shifted some because the timber industry is I'm not a subject matter expert. I'm not a forester, but I do work closely with the forestry program. One of the things that we've been working on is white bark pine. If people are not familiar with white bark, it's a high elevation, slow growing tree that really is not economically um, harvestable, or we don't cut it down for boards or nothing like that. Since it's so high and it's really gnarly, it grows. The wind blows it around. Takes a long time for it to grow. But in the process of developing our strategy, we learned more about the significance of white bark pine in snowpack retention. It
Mm.
provides a food source for over 100 animals, different animals, including us. Historically, we gathered white bark pine nuts for our food source. So, yeah, that's some of the things that we've been doing with
Hmm.
forestry and just looking at different. I think I forgot about this. So we were I think the first tribe in the United States to set aside a wilderness area on our reservation. So in the Mission Mountains, which is part of the Rocky Mountains, the Northern Rocky Mountains, we set aside a huge area and set that side in wilderness. So people can't harvest. I mean, we have to we're talking right now about doing some selective harvesting because the the dominant tree that used to be ponderosa pine is now turned to Douglas fir, and it's
Oh, okay.
really growing thick. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, that's kind of
Well, and you're being purposeful about it. I mean, your practices are a reflection of your values, and I think that's where we all need to get to. David, I want to go to the third pillar of the plan. I'll read it. Here it says transforming global agricultural practices at maximum speed to reduce the release of, much like the forestry practices, to sequester carbon. Give us some examples of what transforming global agricultural practices would entail.
So there's several different practices that can be used to implement regenerative organic agriculture systems.
Hmm.
And one of them is basically minimizing the disturbance of the soil. You plant a lot more cover crops, you try to avoid bare soil, and you reduce tillage where you can. So it's a change in very common practice in agriculture, and it has really strong carbon benefits. Another thing is plant diversity. Intercropping is growing two or more crops together in the same space, and they can have very positive interactions with each other, which can increase fertility and productivity.
Hmm.
Another thing is agroforestry, which is integrating trees and shrubs with annual plants. For example, you could have row crops, annual row crops, and then you could have nut trees that are integrated so that you have another cash crop. It can actually be economically good for farmers to have this diversity as well. One of the fascinating things about uh, this switch in practices is having more perennial plants.
Mm.
There is now a wheat called Kernza that was developed by the Land Institute in Kansas, and it is a wheat crop that produces every year without being replanted. It's a perennial plant, and you can just imagine what that does for the
Yeah.
carbon sequestration. And they are already producing this wheat. It's been in cereals. I've actually purchased a cereal that had Kernza in it. It was delicious. And so this is a really exciting thing where we could actually have a major crop
Yeah.
and it on a perennial basis, which has tremendous carbon benefits and also economic benefits as well. Another thing is more careful integration of livestock into grazing cover crops and increasing manure for agricultural practices. So these are just several of the things that can be integrated into systems so that you have a more carbon sensitive agriculture practice. And a lot of these things are starting to spread around the world.
Yeah, I'm reading about it all the time. More and more farmers are embracing regenerative practices. Mike, tell us a little bit about your agricultural practices in your tribal lands, and are you thinking through any changes that might need to be made to support this pillar of the rescue plan?
well, you think about history. We were not farmers.
Right,
Historically, we were hunter-gatherers. So
right.
now is a big shift in our culture and our history. So over the years, I mean, there's a lot of people within on the reservation that have um, gotten into agriculture and livestock.
Hmm.
So the programs, they look at the noxious weed problems that we have, and even with increased temperatures, we're seeing different. And one of the elders, said that I've seen plants here that I've never seen in my life, or insects, or things like that. So the management of weeds, I think the lands program is working on different, like David said, native planting native plants in these different areas and doing more research and education. So that's a big part of it. And yet the other thing is they're upgrading all of the irrigation systems. So it's
Oh,
really important. Water, water is life. So being able to manage that water in a real um, a way that, we're people say it, you're wasting water when you're pouring it, but it goes somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
It goes into the aquifer or it goes into the ground. That's
Yep.
not wasting water.
Nope,
Uh,
that's recharging.
Recharging the aquifer. So just using it in a more efficient way, I think,
Mm-hmm. Well, and
especially for the agriculture.
you guys are a lot like, where I live in California, where your water is snow runoff. Your
It is.
mountains store a lot of your water, and
Mhm.
when that system changes, California, of course, is very agricultural, especially in the Central Valley, and when that snowpack changes and when the runoff cycles change, that can be hugely disruptive, not just to agricultural systems, but also, drinking water systems. We're going to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, we're going to talk more about the rescue plan. And so don't go away, folks. There's more Go Green Radio right after this. Welcome back to Go Green Radio, everybody. So glad that you could be with us today. We're having a wonderful conversation about a very serious topic. David Merrill from Climate North Star is talking with us about their climate rescue plan. And we are talking about the different pillars of the plan. And David, I want to read this fourth pillar of the plan and then have you talk about it. It says Climate North Star advocates reductions in personal consumption and waste generation by wealthy countries and individuals. This would function as a carbon reduction accelerator, especially in the years before reaching the 2035 target of global 100% renewable energy. Talk to us about this nexus between consumption and the climate.
Well, one of the ways to look at it is to consider this statistic: per capita energy use in the United States is 4 times the global average, and waste generation is 3 times the global average. And since fossil fuel burning is the main driver of climate change, limiting consumption and waste is a direct impact on planetary warming. It's just a very, very basic thing. We just compare, for example, the lifestyle of the Salish and Kootenai people in this land so long ago. It was very minimal resource intensive. It was all in natural systems, really no waste. And now we are in an industrialized situation driven by fossil fuels, and our consumption is a large part of what is driving that whole process. So we need to be more aware of what we purchase, if we need it, if it's excessive, and if there's ways that we can meet our needs that are less resource intensive. And certainly, waste is something that we can all agree we don't want to do.
Yeah.
Why waste something when you can make something useful? So, this is something that is a direct impact on fossil fuel use, the consumption patterns, and especially as we are transitioning away from fossil fuel energy to renewable energy, this gives us direct, immediate benefits on planetary warming.
Well, I think it was Benjamin Franklin in Poor Richard's Almanac who said, "Waste not, want not." I mean,
Absolutely.
this is not a newfangled concept, and it's so important, ever more important today. Mike, what are your thoughts about how your tribes and other tribes with which you work can encourage people to make better choices with their consumption habits?
Oh man, that's a really it hit home because I look at just my family, my tribe and people, and I look around and see how much waste there is, and even with the kids, like you was talking about the R League school kids,
Yeah.
they're looking at that type of thing too, and they're paying attention to it. And I talked a little bit about reciprocity. So, our traditional values have always taught us not to waste. So I talked about reciprocity. Don't take what you don't need. Use what you take, and use it in a good way. But we've all been influenced. I'm guilty of it myself, of taking too much, and wasting. So just I think really educating outreach again. It's like calling people on it, but I've been working for the tribe for 42 years now, and I've worked with a lot of tribes throughout the country. and I continue to do that work. In fact, I was the chairman of the RTOC, the Region 8 RTOC,
Hmm.
Regional Tribal Operations Committee. Which is North and South Dakota, Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, Montana. And I continue to engage with those guys and gals. We are actually planning another climate workshop up in Browning here in a couple of months. So it's just continuing to engage with them and really talking about the new ideas, talking about the new science, new technology. We're working on we're calling it a repurpose grant for plastics to not
Mm.
just recycle them, but repurpose them,
Yep.
building materials out of the plastics. So not just the ones and twos, but all 1 through 7 plastics.
Oh, wow.
Um, we're working on developing those things. So
It's
it's an
so
ongoing
interesting.
challenge.
Yeah, but it's so interesting to hear, what another set of governance is doing. I mean, we are very familiar, many of us, with our local, state, and federal government, but to hear what tribal government and tribal associations are doing together is so interesting, and I think it's so inspiring as well. Um, David, I want you to put us to work now.
Okay.
Our listeners, are probably thinking, okay, what do I do? So I want you to tell us, the top two or three things that we could do in the immediate future to make the greatest impact on the Earth's climate. Give us our to-do list.
Okay, the first thing I would say is gain a deeper understanding of the threat from ice sheet collapse and share the link to the Climate North Star report with your families and friends. What we're doing is kind of unique. There isn't a lot of talk about this zero point 0.5 Celsius. There isn't a lot of talk about stopping fossil fuel burning by 2035. Let's get the word out, talk about why we need it and why we should do it. Consciousness is a first step. The
Hmm.
second, become engaged with others in stopping further fossil fuel development and promoting renewable energy. We have the clean energy technology. We just need to develop it at a much more rapid pace. China, for example, is adding solar power 8 times the rate of the United States.
Yep.
So there's a lot of opportunity for us to speed things up.
Hmm.
Finally, I would consider installing a heat pump in your home for heating and air conditioning, which is more efficient and
Yeah.
usually costs less to operate than a gas furnace. That's a big thing that people can do at home that really has an impact on fossil fuel burning.
Hmm. I mean, here's the thing. A lot of our listeners have social media accounts. You're putting out messages to your friends and family about things that are important to you or funny things that you want to share to entertain. Salt and pepper and sprinkle in some of these messages. Let your friends and family and your contacts know that these things are important to you. And as you mentioned, David, there are some things that you can share, links from Climate North Star's page, and get out on Mike's tribal page, CSKTclimate.org, and share some of that as well. So let's make this socialized. I love that. Thank you, David. And Mike, for you, for other tribal leaders who are listening, what action or actions would you ask them to take?
I think I've said it several times during this talk. We really need our tribal leadership to engage and support what we're doing on the ground. It's really a challenge right now in this administration to even find funding to do those things. All of my work has been from grants and and basically all those are gone. I put in for a $20 million solar grant that I was going to work on the reservation to put up solar and green uh, ground source heat pumps in homes on the reservation. That disappeared. So,
Hmm.
but it doesn't, I don't give up, we keep
Nope.
trying. One of the things that I always think about is a lot of this is personal choice. We have to make personal choices. And one of the things this always sticks in my mind. I was traveling to Florida because I was invited to talk about our climate plan in Florida at the University of Florida. And at the airport, I seen this sign. It says, if you see something, say something. And I watched this person throwing away a recyclable bottle in a garbage. And it just bugged me. All that whole trip, I thought about that. It's like, I didn't say nothing.
Yeah.
So you say something and then also be responsible because I have to think about my own. I flew clear to Florida to get up on this podium and talk about climate change for 20 minutes. How much, flying
Yeah.
out was like, man, I'm so grateful for Zoom and all the
Yeah.
platforms that we have now, but it doesn't take away the interpersonal relationships that we build over time.
That's
Just like
true.
I talked to you about David. I mean, you can't do that in this way, but I'm glad,
Exactly.
Jill. Glad I met you.
Me
Hope to
too.
keep in touch. I think we can help each other. That's the biggest thing.
Absolutely. Well
We're to help.
said.
We're here to help each other.
It's human to human connection that's going to get us to where we need to be. David,
Absolutely.
in the last minute that we have in the show, what parting thoughts would you like to leave with our listeners?
Well, so much of the public conversation about climate change seems to be the planet is going to get hotter and hotter and the impacts more severe. Let's change that to we're going to stop the warming of the planet by 2035. That is the most hopeful fact about the climate challenge. We know that when fossil fuel burning ceases, the planet stops getting warmer right away. So let's come together and create a global 100% renewable energy system. That's what the Climate North Star Plan is all about. And what a tremendous achievement that would be. And we really don't have a choice, so let's just do it.
Let's do it. I love it. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for joining us. And thanks to all of our
Thank you.
listeners for joining us as well. We'll be here same time, same place next week with more Go Green Radio. Until then, have a wonderful week and do something in your life to go green.